Welcome to Not Just Ads, the show where B2B brands discover how creator-led content drives pipeline, builds trust, and grows long-term brand equity. Each episode, we speak with business leaders, founders, and creators who are defining their categories. I'm your host, Marcus Sherwin, and this is the Creator Economy for B2B. Hello and welcome today to Not Just Ads, the Creator Economy for B2B. I'm delighted to be joined by Liam Bartholomew. Liam leads marketing. He's the VP of Marketing and Brand at Cognism. He's been there for a number of years and has been part of their explosive growth over the last number of years. So I'm really excited to get into the conversation with Liam today. Liam, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on, Marcus. And yeah, really happy to be here.
Great. Maybe we can roll back a few years, because I saw you started your career back in Thomson Reuters a few years ago. But yeah, maybe you can just tell me in terms of when you finished up in uni and kind of like how you landed, like what the journey was. Was it always marketing that you wanted to pursue that path, or was it something that just kind of manifested itself as you got into your career, or how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, I studied psychology, and I kind of went to university thinking I would go into that career, or like having a career in psychology. When I sort of finished, I just had to do a lot of extra studying to do that. As much as I love my degree, I've just wanted to earn some money and just do something that wasn't studying for a while. But I thought, oh, maybe I'll go back to that at some point. So I just went out to get a job, and I ended up, I wasn't actually that fussy of where I ended up. I just wanted to have some, I suppose, life experience. And I got a job at Thomson Reuters, and I was in customer support, which instantly put me on the phone with customers. I was in the, so I had 5 business units at that time. I think Thomson Reuters condensed quite significantly now. So I think it's only probably one of 2 or 3, but I was in like their legal business unit that sold legal solutions to lawyers. So I was on the phone arguing with barristers about their subscription lengths and contracts, which was, that's like throwing you in the deep end with some of the best arguers there are. So I think I really learned a lot just about the world of work in that role. And then I think after doing that for about a year and a half, I decided that I wanted to maybe try something else. And I suppose an organization the size of Thomson Reuters means that you can move easier. I decided I think marketing sort of aligned. Thought, oh, it kind of fits to my degree a bit. I think there's something I'd like to try. So I was able to actually move across to into the marketing team. There was a product marketing role, and I actually applied for it, but I didn't get it. They sort of did a thing where they'd always interview you if you applied internally. And the manager at the time, though, called me back and said she didn't, I'm not sure if I'm already allowed to swear, but
yeah, you can, you're far away.
Her exact words were about my presentation that she didn't want me to think it was shit. And it was actually really good. There's just someone external with more experience. So they actually, and I suppose again, where it's a good big organization, they were able to set it up that every Friday I went and worked in the marketing team until a role came up, and then I was able to move across. So then that happened. And then actually Thomson Reuters kind of spelt me getting to Cognism, because I met Alice DeCourcy, our CMO, and she started as head of marketing at Cognism. We both moved on from Thomson Reuters at that stage, at some stage, and then she contacted me when she was at Cognism asking if I wanted to come join her there and team up. So wasn't in the original plan, but yeah, kind of ended up building a career out of it.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Kind of how things fall full circle as well in the marketing world, even though it's big, but you end up crossing paths with a lot of colleagues over the duration of your carear, I think. Yeah,
100%. And obviously now I kind of enjoy that. There's lots of people that you work well with, and that you also admire, and that that especially now, having worked with Alice for longer at Cognism than I did at Thomson Reuters, it's kind of nice because you've been able to build that professional relationship even further. So, yeah.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about Cognism for the listeners that don't know about Cognism. Maybe you could share a bit about the company in terms of you're there over 6 years now, I believe. So maybe you could just share a little bit about the company, their journey from where it started to where it is today.
Yeah. So, Cognism is a B2B data provider and sales intelligence tool. And we started, I think when I started there, we just done Series A, under 5 million in revenue, and there was around 50, 60 people in the company. Since then, which was I started in 2019, we scaled to just under 500 people,
Wow.
and over 80 million in revenue.
Wow, that's some serious scaling in a relatively short number of years as well.
Yes, and there was serious growth, specifically like a real and like some really intense hyper growth, I'd say, in like that period just after COVID, like where a lot of people were feeling that growth at all cost era. We started off a marketing team of 3. We're now around between 20 and 25. But at one point, we even scaled to 40 and that growth at all cost era. So been like, a crazy journey. And obviously the space is heated up, super competitive. I think when I started like Zoom Info, like they still are the market leaders, like the big dogs of it. But then there was like Lucia, but then obviously like Apollo's grown out of it, and you got Clay as well. And so the competition in that space is like heating up as well. Yeah, completely a crazy journey, and like a whole sort of area category sort of just completely opened up.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because if we were having this conversation about 10 years ago, like the whole category about that, like kind of go to market, it's really evolved, the category and the players that are in it and the different sectors and subsectors as well in it. But I think now more than ever, it's very important as well, no, because people can kind of see if you have a really good partner that you're working with and the sales team are effective and efficient in marketing and so on, it can really amplify the growth in such a short space of time as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I suppose like, especially in like the data field, like there's so much has changed in that time as well. I mean, when I started, we could lead with a lot of messaging about like moving away from buying lead lists to having a provider where you could actually access the data in like in a SaaS platform. And that's old news now, but that's like less than like 6 years ago. But back then, I mean, I remembered being in roles where we'd contact a data broker and get a static list, and no one would expect to do that now because of these tools are so ubiquitous and like, and easy to access as well. Like, I mean, there's most of them on like a PLG acquisition motion as well. So I think that access to data has like completely transformed go-to-market teams. And now when you think you've got AI as well, it becomes even more important because those models and those agents need good data to run and work off too.
Yeah, definitely. So in the market then, where do you guys in Cognism? Where is your kind of what would I say sweet spot in terms of the type of customers that you work with and the regions that you're in? I know your head office is in London, is that right?
Yes. So head office is in London. And so I'd say our sort of like niche or our like position in the market is that we are sort of like European data providers, and that's our strength and that's our moat, and where we really put a lot of our time and effort as a company to make sure that we have the best European data on the market. So that doesn't mean we're just there for European companies, but they're for anyone who's looking to expand or grow into Europe. So US companies moving into Europe as much as like those within UK, France or DAC themselves. And I suppose one thing that we've focused on massively is on that data quality as the main piece, is the super important part of it. I think you could look around the market and like some providers will then have more tools and things like that you can grow on top. So I suppose that's another part of like that sales intelligence go-to-market space, is to have all of the bells and whistles. But then the other part is obviously the fundamental part, which is the data. And that's where we've put our time, especially into that European market.
Yeah, it makes sense as well, because I suppose in Europe as well, you've so many different segments in the market in terms of like the market is very different in DAC versus in France or even in the Nordics as well. There's a lot of different intricacies there in terms of the profiling of the size of companies, even different types of roles within companies as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And so there's all of that intricacy you kind of have to work out to be able to not only collect that data, but then actually aggregate it and present it in a way that's actually useful to companies to be able to use as well. And there's the other thing as well, as doing it all in a compliant way. One thing was we were born in the advent of GDPR, which is actually really useful, and means that being European first means that it's like where we've started from. And our bread and butter is making sure that we're able to provide that data in the best and most compliant possible way to our customers.
Yeah. And for customers that use the tool, then what do you find in terms of usage? Is it, say, sales teams like SDRs that are basically accessing your platform, or is it also then marketing teams that are basically using the data to build out lead lists and then to market at kind of like one-to-many? Or is it mostly that or a bit of both, that SDR teams that are like kind of doing, outreach and so on?
Yeah, so we have three main personas, I'd say, which is sales teams, marketers, and RevOps. So obviously the sales development teams use it with like the browser extension they can pull over LinkedIn and use it in their prospecting workflows, get data for cold calling and other outreach. Then within marketing, you can obviously feed it into your demand gen programs and build audiences and lists within the main web app to then push into your marketing campaigns and enrich existing data that you've got. And then obviously with RevOps, there's that whole idea of keeping your data asset fresh and clean. And so you can obviously get access to the API to then push that data into all of your systems, which may run a whole host of things. It could be supporting the marketing team, but again, like I was saying, supporting an AI or anything like that. So they're kind of the three different users. I'd say easiest use case has definitely been sales development, but actually that RevOps use case we're seeing grow exponentially too.
Yeah, no, it's quite versatile as well, because I guess it's different decisions, and also over a longer space of time. Probably for RevOps, you're forecasting maybe 6 to 18 months out, whereas maybe SDRs and stuff, it's like, what can you use now that's going to get you to the end of the quarter to hit the number and so on. So it's interesting. In terms of marketing then for Cognism, you've worked across a number of different roles. I saw you joined to lead up the demand generation, but now you're in charge of, you encompass that into your role as well as the brand and marketing part. Maybe you could just talk to us a little bit about how marketing looked like when you joined the team initially. You said, I think it was initially 6. Now you've 25 people. Is that right? So it's obviously grown quite a lot, but in terms of how you look at marketing, and B2B has obviously evolved as well, how do you think the role has changed, but also in terms of how you look at marketing has changed over the last few years?
Yeah, so when we started out, we started with a very strong lead gen model. I think it was what you did back then and everything we'd learned. So we went out, we obviously aimed to build out an SEO gamer profile where we were ranking for traffic really and trying to get as much traffic to the website. So collating some the content that we wrote for SEO into ebooks, and then we would promote those on LinkedIn and via email to collect contact data. And then we would have what we called actually marketing development reps then to follow up on those leads to then book in meetings for the AEs. And that worked actually. We had quite a lot of growth to begin with. I think we probably got us from that 5 million ARR to 10 million ARR, and the model did give us yield some results. But then what happened was, as we started to grow, the inefficiency in it started to sort of show and crack. We were those leads from white papers would sort of convert at 0.2%. So then a lead to close one meant that we're generating hundreds of leads for very few closed ones, close one deals for Cognism, which meant that we're getting to generating thousands of leads, which is unsustainable. Yeah. And then obviously to get those closed one, we'd have to hire more. You have to build out that MDR function, which then becomes an extremely expensive way of acquiring business. And at the time, there was a lot of chatter about demand gen strategy then. I think Refine Labs were really big.
Yeah. Chris Walker.
Yeah. And he was talking about the whole motion of how everything's changed, which obviously makes perfect sense now, but it was all blowing everyone's minds at the time. I think obviously it was all coinciding with the fact that really we're COVID was happening. Everyone was moving online anyway to hear this stuff. LinkedIn was really becoming a social media platform. I don't really think it was before then.
Yeah.
The nature of email marketing had changed as well, I think, just because of inboxes were overcrowded. So we decided we need to pivot quick, and I think we all met when we could. Actually, it's like we could meet on a few days around then in small groups. We initiated Project Chris Walker, I think we called it at the time, to change our marketing strategy to this ungated model where we drive inbounds, which then converted at like 4% rather than 0.2%, and we could build out a whole strategy around it. We did end up working with Refine Labs for a bit as well in that time and implementing that strategy and refining it. But I think it changed how we think about marketing and really best set us up for future growth. And then that was in after adopting that strategy with the 2 years that we grew 100% on and probably the biggest nominal growth in those years. So it was pivotal, I suppose, in Cognism's growth as well.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing of what you say in terms of the shift. Just a couple of follow-up questions on that. In terms of when you made the shift of changing over from the lead gen to more kind of maybe informing the audience to demand generation, how did, from a tactical perspective, how did that look like then? Was it just kind of creating blogs and leaving it open, but then trying to retarget the audience in some way? Or how would you kind of try to engage them so that once that they're in that, from that kind of education phase to now I want to speak to somebody, would they just automatically contact you, or was there kind of some nurturing sequence that you had in play?
Yeah, it was a lot of trial and error. So to begin with, we just took the original content we had and just ungated it, and then obviously tried our best to build out those retargeting layers from there. But actually, to begin with, we really struggled to see that growth in then inbound demand. And the shift that had to happen was in content, really, was to create a content machine or a media machine that actually was appropriate for demand generation. But that's because what lead gen sets you up is to create content that is its primary purpose is really just to capture data. So it's not about the content. So now you have to have a strategy that, one, is interesting, the content that you create is interesting, multi-format, multimedia, and less, I suppose, prescriptive in who we were targeting. So, when you're doing a lead gen model, you don't want to have all the users and SDRs viewing your content, but downloading your content, because it's going to cause problems for your them funnel through to MDR. So you want to get all of your sales directors, marketing directors. Actually, in a demand gen approach, you want to be influencing everyone with that content and in a format that they can consume, so they actually watch the content, read the content, and it's useful to them. So we had to switch that whole model up of who we were targeting, build out a whole new targeting and sort of go-to-market system there, but also then think about creating content that was actually able to be consumed and influence and create demand. So that means creating creating podcasts and setting those up, changing webinars to being not about follow-up, but about being a live show, with community, creating, and writing blogs and not doing all that were actually interesting for people to read, not to just drive traffic, and then making white papers, huge interactive pages where we're multi media, and we've actually got video and all of that included in it. So that was the huge tactical shift to then make that happen. On top of then obviously those people that do come in, how we can then capture them with retargeting ads and nurture them further there too.
Yeah. Did you find then sometimes when you made the shift that you opened it up, were there you mentioned that the conversion rate increased? Was there initially some people that were maybe outside the ICP because it was opened up and it kind of refined it required some refinement, or was it that your content was already kind of spoked in terms of you're just talking to these types of ICPs, so those were the ones that were engaging more with it?
Yes, I mean that's probably a consistent difficulty, and actually in that original time that we did that and we opened it up as well, I suppose we hadn't really defined the ICP in the same way.
Yeah.
I still find that if it's an inbound with high intent, if we're just talking about, when we're talking about ICP, if we're talking about seniority of a person, that's less of an issue, because once they've submitted a demo request, normally that person is coming through, and then maybe even they might have done it on behalf of their boss. Yeah. There's still some sort of intent there. But I suppose when it's growing outside of who is the best fit business for us, that was has been a learning. And obviously you want to provide your content to everyone all of the time, but also try and find that way of like driving and the right traffic to build the right ICP. I think that the difficulty actually comes in, I think, and everyone finds this, like the between reach and then specificity in the audience you're targeting. And like you can only pull the levers so much on either way, because if you go too hard, I suppose, in like targeting, then you can damage reach enough that you actually then damage the inbound flow as well.
Yeah, it's a fine balance to get right, really, because it's like what you say. If you reach too many, right, there might be a percentage that's useless, but then if you go too deep, there's only so much of that audience as well. So yeah, it's a tricky one. I'd love to talk to you a little bit. Just one final question on that, because it's super interesting what you're saying, because the switch, and I think people see it now, and I think probably 2-3 years ago, maybe not as much. It was like, yeah, people know that there's something there. But I think from finance point of view of a company, people are looking at like, we need something tangible, and the tangible that they have in the short come is a lead. But a lead, as you know, doesn't always mean that it's actual leads to a business outcome. But how did you manage to navigate that in terms of the business itself when you make that switch from very lead gen focused to more open gated content in terms of like signals and how you'd report to the business of like, okay, we're going in the right direction?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is obviously, the MQL can't be the only like leading indicator anymore, and that like when you're getting inbound demo requests as your only MQL and not like content leads or leads from like gated content, obviously the number crashes, but it converts at a much higher rate. So I suppose that has also been a challenge. At the beginning, when it works and you're just getting everyone aligned on pipeline and revenue, it's great, because no one asks any questions. Because if you can just demonstrate that you're actually generating more pipeline and revenue, the sales team are happier because they're talking to people who actually have intent to buy, then that answers that problem. Once you're embedded in the system, you've obviously got to show that, one, you can affect it and impact it, and then got to be able to show those leading indicators that you are doing so. And I think that becomes like the harder part. We use attribution tool like Dream Data to help inform some of those decisions. But we've also looked at like creating, like we pushing all of what we call our pre-MQL data that we can gather into a data warehouse, into Redshift, and then like putting that back out to sort of like analyze trends over time as well, to see if we can correlate different activity to increases in traffic and inbound demands as well. We obviously also ask like self-reported attribution. How did people hear about us, to sort of like track the activities that we were doing, so we can see where that demand is getting driven from, as well as using traditional attribution like last touch on U-turn basis. But it's a real collection of everything. But you have to work out the bits that like are appropriate to take to senior leadership, I think, because it's easy just to record a ton of different what like seem like vanity metrics to them, and then like stating them is kind of meaningless if you can't tie it back to that demonstration that it's actually going to increase that MQL number, that inbound demand number, and therefore pipeline and revenue. So that's definitely been a learning at the same time.
Yeah, I guess it has to be digestible to them as well, that it's linked to a business metric. One other thing, actually, I saw you posted a video recently on LinkedIn, and you were talking about that, about LLMs, and about when you researched on your where did you hear about us, and a lot came through like certain LLMs from what you mentioned. In the last couple of months, how are you looking at that in terms of your go-to-market, or like how you are optimizing? Because it's a big challenge, I think, for a lot of brands now in terms of how they're navigating that. From the rules from SEO, I guess, are slightly different in terms of how people are getting recommended on LLMs. How are you finding that at the moment? Is it something that it's like a lot of kind of trial and looking, seeing what works, or is there some consistent rules across different LLMs from what you've seen?
Yeah, I think everyone is kind of like in learning phase here and trying the best of it. We are looking at basically being like building. We had a very good SEO or like traditional SEO program, and have always performed well there. So we're sticking to that, and keeping that strong where we can, especially where we really focus was on our bottom of funnel play, or like our money keywords. And we know that like the LLMs are still using like Google rankings and to inform how they respond. So keeping that part as strong is still really important to us. And that enables us to get mentions on some of those bottom funnel searches that then happen within LLMs. But the other part is then focusing when it comes to top of funnel is that obviously people go into LLMs and they ask longer, queried, more specific questions. So it's less keyword based. So then the rest of it is trying to basically create content that asks the questions that are like our personas would ask and the information that they need, rather than trying to go after specific keywords, and doing that through things where we can actually put some proprietary research into it so that we can be cited to in those answers.
Yeah.
And actually give something useful to the LLMs to cite. Because I think it's all very well at the moment, people talking about writing their strategies, but if they just take the content and don't give you any sort of mention or a reference, then that brand visibility that everyone's aiming for is kind of lost.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been like the strategy that we've had so far. Obviously, there's the other parts like building out reviews where we can get mentions elsewhere. I think that bit's kind of like the mentions bit is kind of new. We're kind of seeing where we're going with that. But yeah, the main aim has been obviously to be able to maintain and increase visibility, work out how to measure that, and how we can also hopefully measure visibility increases with traffic and pipeline increases at a later date. Because we've already seen that change between branded traffic going up and traditional SEO traffic declining. So yeah, it's kind of been an interesting era to play with.
It is. It's definitely, I think, and I was relatively young when this happened, but I think it seems now, it'll see how it plays out in the next 18 months, but it kind of like we're at that golden pages, like Google moment, when everyone used to look up the golden pages. Like that now people are looking more on LLMs than they're going to Google search. And so it will be interesting to see how Anthropic and OpenAI and some of these, how they actually transition that into a business model, with whether it's branded prompts or how that plays out in the next few years. I don't really know, but it's definitely a very exciting time in terms of how it's all going to play out.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
No idea at the moment.
Yeah.
I actually think there's doing a lot of good for marketing, to be honest. I think SEO become gamified. And I feel like this is actually making people focus more on fundamentals, which I'm kind of an advocate for. So I kind of like the challenge. Yeah,
no, definitely. It makes it a really exciting time as well. I'd love to talk to you a little bit about, I've seen in some of the posts around some of the employees of Cognism as well, talking like about their experience working at the company in terms of like day in the life kind of content and stuff. It seems like employer advocacy is a big part of about the company as well. I just wondered from your point of view, how you seen that playing out in the marketing org, and does that play into the strategy, or is it more of it's beneficial to the brand, but it's like a kind of a byproduct of that? Or is it something that you actively promote in the organization to get people to post more and to kind of talk more about the brand?
Yes. So we have like what we call like a creative fund, like an internal influencer program, and where like our personas like sales and marketing, especially in the marketing team, it's good to sort of like we can actually directly influence the audience that we want to impact. So there's like a formalized setting to it. There's an informal kind of push to get people posting, and then there's like a formalized select few that we actually like drive and we call like our internal SMEs that we're trying to like in the same way. We have like externals that that we'll work with, but we have like these internal influencers as well to push out content from that we're already creating within the media machine. So like that comes out of my profile too. And we categorize that between, people who are thought leaders in their section. And then there might be like a leader, which we call like a visionary leader. And each one will be pushing out a different narrative as part of that media machine. And it all comes from this idea that we want our content to all be person-led rather than brand-led, because with like people buy from people rather than brands. So we can do that then through people's LinkedIn profiles and put like a name or a face to every bit of content. So like podcasts, live shows, stuff like that, they're all associated with a particular person who then is regularly posting, and we're working with them to post and create content. So it's all, there is like a big thread and plan to it. But yeah, and like even if like on the outside, it kind of feels like it's just like the team posting themselves.
Yeah, because I saw on your profile you actually have a demand generation, like a whole kind of playbook around that note that you're promoting on your LinkedIn profile as well. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit more about that also.
Yeah, so I suppose actually that the demand gen playbook is like a bit of content that we just recently released, and yeah, it starts from basically our whole demand gen model. It's like a course and like how you can like sort of replicate Cognism's demand gen model. It starts with like how we did that transition, then include some of the stuff here about sort of like creators that we are just talking about, and SEO and all of that side. And actually, it's a perfect example of how if you go into that content, each part of it or each course is led by a specific person who then is sharing it. So that's each, again, person led. So you can sort of see that strategy in play through that content as well. But if you want to learn anything really about our approach, and how we're doing it, it's a great bit of content to check out.
Great. Yeah, we'll put the link in the show notes as well. Just before we finish up, any predictions for the future in terms of the next 6 to 18 months? Where do you see B2B going? What are you excited about? And what do you think is just completely a waste of time as well in B2B? That's like maybe just over hyped.
Yeah. The first bit I think is really interesting is search and SEO and what's happening with like AI search, GEO. I think that's really interesting. And I think how people approach the web is going to be really interesting. I think so much more is going to be done through LLMs, that your website's use will change, or the traffic that you get there will change. And therefore, like how you approach your setup there will change. I think that's very exciting. I also think that plays into video, like how a video is better transcribed by LLMs in general. It's appearing more on the SERP. I think people are heading more to social platforms where video is all more video first. I think there's a lot of exciting stuff there in B2B. So I think, to me, getting a handle on both a really good video strategy plus a great plus that AI search strategy is going to be key. And I think that also opens up more for, if the web changes, less happens digitally in that same arena because people are interacting with AI there. That I think events really open up again, which is exciting for like more of the human interaction. And I think they become even more important.
Yeah.
They would be my sort of predictions going forward. What's like a complete waste of time? That's an interesting one. I don't know if there's anything that I can really think of that I would call out and say, I don't want to be one of those people who says something's dead, or like, or a complete waste of time. I don't know.
It's interesting what you say about video, though, because I think what some people are seeing with video, that there's a huge increase in terms of people sharing video, and it makes sense. And I think in LinkedIn as a platform, if you look at like the typical video first, like TikTok and then probably Instagram as well, is probably transition to video first. And there's a big push with LinkedIn on video first, especially around thought leader ads and stuff. But the point that you raised there, I think, is really interesting, where you mentioned that with LLMs, in terms of like authenticity and kind of creating authority and stuff like that. I don't know if there's been research done, but if there is, in terms of how brands have actual video content and if they're like kind of seen as an authority on that, if they rank or they are recommended by LLMs because of that. I'm not sure if there's been research or if you've seen anything done, but I think it could be an interesting space to see if there's a link between those brands that appear more with video and their leadership and their team and so on, that if that links then to like kind of receiving more mentions when it comes to prompting on LLMs.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, so I think everyone's used to like consuming video on like YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and therefore that's bleeding into LinkedIn. It's sort of taking over. And then because video is everywhere on all those platforms, it appears in like Google search results. And then I suppose to the last question, I'm not sure, but we do know that AI is just way better at obviously reading and understanding videos.
Yeah.
And recency, authenticity, authority are really important to it. So into what shows up, like regular video is going to like tick a lot of those boxes.
Yeah.
They're just some of the assumptions we could make, but yeah.
No, you're right. I think video definitely for the level of trust and everything that it builds, when you hear people's voice and you see their face, it's much more impactful than a banner ad for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Liam, it was a pleasure talking with you. Thanks again for joining us on the show. If anyone wants to find your content, hear more about Cognism, about what you share, where are you most active?
Most active on LinkedIn. So yeah, please do connect or follow with me. That'd be great.
Great. We'll leave your profile in the show notes as well. Liam, thanks again for joining us. It was great talking with you today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, Marcus. Great to chat.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye-bye.